ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय.
Yes, I'm a little bit confused because about the system of Beta Beta, because especially when you mentioned that it's compared with the system of Balava, you mentioned
Uh,
Nibarka.
okay,
So,
so the first Beta school historically is Bhaskara.
Mhm.
Second is Yadava Prakash. Then we can say Nimbarka. Nimbarka is Swabhavika Beta. Swabhavika means natural, right? Bhava means a feeling, right? Swabhava means my feelings, my feeling. The way I feel that Brahman, I feel that the Lord and the souls and matter are one, but I also feel that they're the same, and I feel that that's natural. They're naturally one and the same, but they're also naturally different. That's what Nimbarka is basically saying. And then you have a Achintya Beta Tattva, where it's not a matter of feeling, but it's a matter of exasperation because we can't understand. So Achintya means not knowing, inconceivable. So we realize that we have only limited understanding. We understand that there's the Lord, the souls, and the world, and we feel although we feel that they're one in this and separate as well. They're one and the same, but they're also separate at the same time in different ways. We're unable to fully understand that or comprehend that because of our limited situation, our limited brain power or situation, right? So mental faculties. So we say it cannot be spoken about by words. It can't be totally explained. It can't be fully explained. I mean, everybody accepts that it can't be fully explained, but not everybody doesn't try to explain it. Ramanuja tries to explain it, right? Nimbarka tries to explain it. All these others, they try to explain it. Even the Gaudiya Acharyas, they try to explain it, even though they say it's ultimately unknowable, like that. So these are the different types of beta, like that. I mean, you can think of Vishishta Dvaita as a type of beta also in a sense, because there's a certain type of oneness, there's a certain type of there's certain, even Balaba's philosophy is Shuddha Dvaita. It's Advaita, it's oneness, but it's purified oneness. It doesn't have the it doesn't have the Maya, it doesn't have the avidya, illusion, doesn't have all those aspects that Shankara puts in it, right? Which are not really, which just make things more complicated. So it's purified, it's pure oneness. So the soul and the universe are one with God. Yes, we accept that in a pure way. We accept it in a pure way, is what Bala was saying, right? So I mean, these things, to really know all the very minute differences between these philosophies, but we can understand that there are two very stark philosophies, Madhva and Shankara. Shankara says everything's one, Kevala Dvaita. Everything's absolutely one. There's only one thing. There's only one reality. And then Madhva says, no, there's duality. Madhva actually says there's the only thing which is one is that the different forms of the Lord are equal. But apart from that, everything else is different, right? There's a difference between one soul and another soul. There's a difference between one piece of matter and another piece of matter. There's a difference between the Lord and matter. There's a difference between the Lord and the soul. And there's a difference between, so two souls, two pieces of matter, a matter and soul. Matter and soul, the Lord and the soul, the Lord and matter, like that. So this is called Panchabeta. So Madhva's philosophy is called Panchabeta, right? So when he says Dvaita or Beta, but he's not, Madhva isn't in favor of full Beta-vad. If he was completely against oneness in every situation, right, then he would say there's a difference between Krishna and Rama and Narasimha. No, he doesn't believe that. He believes that the Lord, different forms of the Lord, are equal. What he doesn't believe is So there's no difference between one form of the Lord and another form of the Lord, according to Madhva. But that's it. There's difference between one soul and another soul, a piece of matter, another piece of matter, the soul and a piece of matter, God and the soul, God and matter. These are the 5 differences of Madhva, like that. So these are the philosophies on the edges, right? They're at the extremes of Vedanta. In the middle are all the rest. Vishishta Dvaita, Shuddha Dvaita, Dvaita Dvaita, Beda Beda, Swabhavika Beda Beda, Chintya Beda Beda. These are all in the middle, like that. They all attempt to show how these 3 Vedantic realities, the soul, the God, Chitta Chit and Ishvara, right? So the soul, matter, and God, right, are in one way they're the same, and in other ways they're different. They all these philosophies in the middle try to show that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, not so easy to understand. I mean, it's easy to understand in some way.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have more questions regarding to this.
Yeah, and this thing about property and parama bhakti and jnana and property and everything like that, it gets a little confusing because on one level we say to people that by surrendering to the Lord one attains liberation, right? And Krishna says this in the Charma Sloka, in Bhagavad Gita, he says, abandon all these dharmas that I've taught you. Like Arjuna, I've taught you karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. I've taught you all these things. Give up all those things and just surrender to me. Right? Just surrender unto me. And by surrendering unto me, then I will give you moksha. Moksha yishami. Okay, like that. So some people say, okay, it's because of the surrender that he's attaining liberation. But it's actually because of the Lord. The Lord is the Lord can give him liberation. The Lord is asking him to surrender. Even if he doesn't surrender, the Lord can still give him liberation. Even if he surrenders, maybe the Lord can not give him liberation. So it's up to the Lord ultimately to give or not give liberation. So the question is, what is the real situation of the Jivatman? Arjuna, in that case of Bhagavad Gita, or any of us, is that we are actually the servant of the Lord. We are actually surrendered to the Lord. Strip away all the ignorance, all the avidya, all the maya, all the illusion, and the pristine soul, which is left completely uncovered from all these things, is the servant of the Lord. And the Gaudiyas also accept that. Jiva Swarupoy Nitya Krishna Das, they say that, right? So it's understood that we are that thing. So really all we have to do is realize that. But even if we don't realize that, we're still the servant of the Lord. Even the people in this world who are not Vaishnavas, who are not even theists, who don't even believe in God, they're still the Jivatman, they're still souls, and those souls are inherently servants or slaves of God. Yeah. So nobody can get away from it. You can't get away from it. You can either realize it or not realize it. And Krishna says, by realizing it and surrendering to me, I will save you. Otherwise, there will be a problem. It would say, well, why doesn't everybody get liberated? If everybody's a servant of God, then why doesn't he liberate everybody? Why is it dependent upon us surrendering, us getting the knowledge that we're actually his servant? It's actually not dependent on us, because the point is, who is the real doer? The real doer is the Lord within. The Lord within is actually making us to surrender. So what are we doing? We're not really doing anything. We're not even if we realize that we're his servant, it's only because he makes us to realize that. If we surrender to him, it's only because he makes us surrender unto him. So we're not really doing anything. We're not really doing anything. He's doing everything. This is his lila.
For me, it's just a little bit confusing, the aspect that looks like after the disappearance of Ramanuja from this world, the concept of prapati was not very clear in the books of the previous acharyas. I don't know if the Albars mentioned prapati directly, or they use the term bhakti also, because we see that even Ramanuja in the Sharanagati Gaya used the word bhakti yoga also.
Yes.
In the Gita Vasya also he mentions bhakti but not property. So
Yeah,
why?
in the Gajjas, in the Sharanagati Gajja and the other Gajjas, he uses the term bhakti, but at the same time, it's very clear. It's very clear that in the Sharanagati, when Sharanagati itself means surrender, it means property, like that. So whether or not Ramanuja actually used the word property in Sharanagati Gajja or not doesn't mean anything. The Sharanagati Gajja and the other Gajjas are completely about property. They're about Sharanagati, right? It's completely clear like that. So one of the things is that in these other books like Vedartha Sangraha and Gita Bhashya and the different commentaries on the Vedanta Sutras like Sri Bhashya, Vedanta Deepa, Vedanta Sara, he's trying to defeat Advaita like that. So in Advaita, this concept of property is not really understood in Advaita. They don't even talk about it really. Okay. Although if we look in the Upanishads, it's there. It's Nyasa Vidya. It's one of the 32 Upanishadic Vidyas. So they should know about it, but they don't. They don't talk about it. They just talk about karma, jnana, and bhakti, right? Which is what Shankara talks about. And Yadava and Yadava, Shankara specifically talks about jnana. Yadava, Prakash, and Bhaskara, they talk about jnana, but also karma and jnana, like that. So all of these people are emphasizing either jnana alone, or jnana and karma, or jnana and karma and bhakti, but none of them are talking about property, like that. So Ramanuja, when he's trying to defeat all of those, he's not going to talk about property. He's going to defeat them on the things that they are proposing from the Upanishads, and he doesn't necessarily touch on it. But he's written these other books. These books are not for the Advaitins to read, the Sharanagati Gajja and the Ranga Gajja and Vaikuntha Gajja. It won't be accepted by the Advaitins, right? But they are based upon, obviously, right, the Upanishadic Vidya, the process of Nyasa Vidya or surrender to the Lord, like that. So that is a concept which is there. Some people, this Professor Lester or whatever is like that, he has this thing where he says, no, Ramanuja didn't write the Gajjas. And therefore Ramanuja only spoke about liberation by bhakti. But what is the bhakti that Ramanuja talked about? The bhakti that Ramanuja talked about was constant remembrance of the Lord, like the pouring of oil from one pot to another. Anushmriti, anusandana, constant 100% meditation on the Lord, like that. That is meditation. That is not. It's not the bhakti. It's not really the bhakti, the Navada bhakti that we hear about in books like the Bhagavatam and Ramayana, Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasa. These are all karma, and I mean they're not. It's more like jnana, actually. It's more like jnana, the type of bhakti that Ramanuja talks about, right? And in the Charma Sloka of Krishna, this verb vraja, Mamekam sharanam means surrender. Vraja has a mental aspect to it. That verb, it doesn't have to be physical surrender of paying obeisances, or performing some acts like japa or homa or archana, whatever, deity worship, whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be. It's more a mental thing. So we've come to understand these terms of karma, jnana, bhakti, the yogas, and what is bhakti, what it is in slightly different ways than the way Ramanuja explains it, like that. Yeah. So different sampradayas will give slightly different definitions to these terms. So we have to see what the different definitions that the different acharyas and sampradayas say, and we have to say which one makes more sense ultimately, like that. So does it make sense? Does it make sense at all that all the Sri Vaishnavas they're all talking about property, they're all talking about surrender, that Ramanuja's Gajyas talk about surrender, but that somehow or other Ramanuja never talked about surrender. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. So that's just one scholar's idea. We can totally discount that. At the same time, when Ramanuja talks about bhakti, what does it mean? When he talks about parama bhakti, when he talks about he's talking a lot about internals. He's talking about meditation and realization. Not meditation means realization, means knowledge. So again, what Shankara says is right in one way. Jnanat mokshaha, right? There's a saying by Shankara, Jnanat mokshaha, from knowledge comes liberation. Yeah, we agree. We agree with that, right? Shankara says from knowledge of being one, you become one, right? We don't say, no. From the correct knowledge comes liberation. What's the correct knowledge? The correct knowledge is that we are slaves or servants of the Supreme Lord. So from that knowledge, that liberation basically comes. That's it. Like that. So all of these ideas that Ramanuja is really preaching us to do bhakti, or he's really preaching us to do bhakti associated with karma and jnana or whatever like that, and he's not telling us to do property, or that property itself is the upaya, right? That any of these things is the upaya, any of these things is the means, is wrong ultimately, because ultimately it's the Lord who is the ultimate means. He's the real means.
Yeah. I remember that in Mumukshupad, in the introduction, it said that even the conception of bhakti yoga is offensive because it goes against the nature of the soul, because it's completely dependent of the Lord. So how someone who is completely dependent of the Lord can do something to get liberation?
Yeah, even people, we tell people that property is the way, and karma jnana is not the way. This is how you see people on a certain level. The first level, they come and they think they have to do something. So then that means karma yoga. Yeah. So then they do different things. They do different ritualistic acts. They do the things, and they think, okay. So after doing these acts, then they get some intelligence, and they go, oh, as well as doing these things, right? I want to know what I'm doing, right? I want to understand the process by which this is purifying me, or how am I going to become liberated? So they add a component of jnana, a component of knowledge. So from karma yoga, they add jnana yoga. So karma and jnana, they're doing things, and they're learning about those things from the scriptures, how those things are purifying themselves. And then karma and jnana becomes bhakti. It becomes bhakti because they're doing devotional things. They're knowing why they do them like that. And this is becoming bhakti, different forms of bhakti like that. So then they do karma yoga, jnana yoga, they do bhakti yoga. And then finally they realize, hey, you know what? I'm doing this and I'm giving up all the fruits of doing this. I'm learning that I should simply surrender to the Lord. And so they do property, then they surrender to the Lord like that. But it's not the karma, it's not the jnana, it's not the bhakti, it's not even the property that saves them. It's the Lord himself who saves them.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so these are all just different stages, but and you get to a stage where you say, okay, property, I have to surrender to the Lord like that. And then you realize after you surrender to the Lord, you realize, actually, I didn't have to surrender because I was always surrendered. I was always surrendered. I just didn't know it. What I really have to do is know that I was always surrendered. There's nothing I can do. He's working through me. Whatever's happening is because of him. So when I surrendered, it's like he made me surrender. He made me surrender.
Yes, that according to Bhagavatam, they mentioned that first is Shravan and Kirtan, and the last stage is Atma Nivedam, surrender. But let me see if I am right, if I have understood right, that for Sri Vaishnavas, is first property, first you surrender, and when you surrender, then the devotion comes. Is right this?
devotion, but if devotion comes or doesn't come, that's also because of him.
Yeah, yes, I understand this, but how to say that?
No, so usually by practice we become devoted. You know, we practice doing different devotional acts, and maybe in the beginning we don't feel devoted, but then after we practice them, then we feel devoted. We get some taste for them, and we do them more like that. Okay, that's fine. But it's not the doing of the devotional acts or the bhakti that comes from them, the devotion that comes from them, that is the cause of liberation.
Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah, ultimately, he's the cause of liberation only, like that. Whether we learn to love him more than another person or less than another person, it doesn't make any difference.
And
Because,
what about this? What about this concept that Gaudians have? That they say that the Harinam, the name of the Lord, is non-different from the Lord, and the means to get moksha is the name that is not different from the Lord itself.
yeah, there are different means in different ages, yet that's written in the scriptures. These are all dharmas. But what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? He says, Sarva dharman parityaja.
Yeah.
Give up these dharmas. So chanting the holy name is a dharma, right? It's chanting the holy name, japa, kirtana, bhajana, whatever it is, like that. That is a yuga dharma for Kali Yuga. Okay. So if we were in another age, we could say the Yuga Dharma is deity worship, the Yuga Dharma is yagya, fire ceremonies or whatever, or the Yuga Dharma is just doing meditation. These are all Yuga Dharmas, right? But they're still dharmas, right? There's still things that we have to put effort into. The holy name won't chant itself.
Yeah.
The fire sacrifice won't do itself. The meditation doesn't happen spontaneously. The deity worship doesn't do itself, right? But the Lord is the one who's doing all these things through us, right? So when we come to the realization that everything is his will and he's doing everything through us, like that, then there is no self-effort. There is really no self-effort, like that. So all the idea that we're doing self-effort, and by our self-effort we're saving ourselves, that idea has to be given up. So we don't have to give up doing fire sacrifices, worshiping deities, meditating, or chanting the holy name. We don't have to give up any of those things. We can do all of those things because he says to do them in the scriptures, so we can do them, right? We can do them as a service to him. We don't have to give them up, and they have, but they are not the cause. Us doing that is not the cause of liberation.
Yeah.
So when we say, so the Gaudiyas say, chant the holy name and you'll be liberated, or chant the holy name and you get prema. If you get prema, you're not going to stay here. You're going to go back to Godhead, right? That's what they say. Even if you don't go back to Godhead, if you have prema, it doesn't really matter where you are, right? That's what they say, right? So chant the holy name and you'll get prema. So basically, it's the same thing as moksha, because they believe that you can have moksha even in this lifetime. Right?
That I was reading a book by Satyanarayan. What is the name? The name is Nama Tattva. It's a small book, and it's about the pastime of Ajamila. And he says something very interesting there. He says that Ajamila become a liberated soul, not in the last part of his life, but when he pronounced by the first time Narayana, the name Narayana, when he gave this name to his son. From this time, he became liberated. And he said that from this time, he was a liberated soul, but he continued doing bad things because bad samskaras, but he was a liberated soul. And at the end, he says that he didn't die when the Vishnudutas came instantly, but he got another opportunity. And this was for develop prema. Because he mentioned two kinds of liberation. He said that the first kind of liberation is that you can go to the planet of the Lord, but don't be a personal associate of the Lord. But if you develop some kind of prema, you will be closer to the Lord in Vaikuntha. So,
Okay.
is there any?
This is all theology. This is all theology. Moksha is moksha. Moksha is moksha. Liberation is liberation. You're there in the supreme world, like that. You say that by doing this, by your efforts, you are getting closer to God in Vaikuntha.
Yes.
In Vaikuntha or Goloka, wherever it is, who's in charge?
Lord Narayana.
Here in this world, who's in charge?
Lord Narayana.
Okay, so wherever you are, he's in charge. He calls the shots. He says, so somebody does their sadhana and they do their meditation that they're a gopi or a manjari or a cowherd boy, or they do raganuga bhakti for many lives or whatever it is. They get reborn in Krishna Lila in this material world. These are all concepts in different sampradayas, specifically Gaudiya Sampradaya. Okay, fine. And the goal is that I'll be a manjari in the spiritual world, like that. But when you get actually to the spiritual world, who's in charge?
Krishna.
If he wants you to be a manjari, yeah, you can be a manjari.
And I remember
if he doesn't want you to be a manjari, even if you didn't do raganuga bhakti, even if you never did raganuga bhakti, he can take you and he can say, I need a manjari. Be a manjari.
Yes, and we can mention that the example of Putana. He didn't practice Raganuga Bhakti, but he probably mentioned that he got a position similar to a mother.
Right. So, okay. So then there may be some stories that in a previous life, Putana practiced devotion, and then she took birth as a demon, and she got this chance to breastfeed Krishna, and then Krishna felt that she was a mother, and then gave her this position like a mother in Goloka Vrindavan or whatever. Okay, maybe there's some stories like that, but philosophically, Vedartha Sangraha, the book that we're talking about now, we're talking philosophy here, like that. So there can be all sorts of theological stories about this and that and the other and whatever it is, like that. Ultimately, moksha is moksha. Yeah. Moksha is moksha. Moksha means Jiva Swarupoi Nitya Krishna Das. We are eternally the servant of God, is what the Gaudiyas say. They say that. We also say that. All the Vaishnavas will agree that we're serving God. So if God wants us to be a blade of grass, we'll be a blade of grass. It's up to him, ultimately, like that. Now, maybe we can influence him. Maybe we can influence him by doing, if you want to spend your life doing Radha Krishna meditation and you're really attracted to that, and then, yeah, so maybe the Lord, look at Andal. Andal thought of God as a lover, like that, and Lord Ranganatha married her like that. So is she she's a consort of the Lord in Sri Vaikuntham? I don't know if she is or if she isn't. It's up to him. It's up to him. Here, she had this leela of marrying Ranganath.
Yeah, and I remember this blessing that Ramanuja got in one of the Gajas, that the Lord says to him, you will be liberated and you will be able to do any kind of service.
Any kind of service, exactly. That's the point.
I like that. Yeah.
You know, it's not that when you get there, he says, okay, you are able only to do this. That's the concept. This is a concept called Taratamya. Madhva has a similar concept like this. He says that you can imagine that that every soul is like a glass, a cup. So there's a 1 liter soul and there's a 500 milliliter soul. Yeah. So when we fill that 500 milliliter soul with 500 milliliters of water, it's full. When we fill the 1 liter, if we put 500 milliliters in the 1 liter, it's only half full. So in liberation, every cup is full, but the cups are different sizes. Yeah. So the similar idea in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is, I somehow or other, I'm eternally the servant of the Lord, but I can desire to become a servant of his in Madhurya Rasa or in Sakya Rasa or in Dasya Rasa or in Shanta Rasa, whatever, like that. And once I do that, that's fixed. And then when I get there, if I want to upgrade, I can't upgrade like that. I can't say, and the gopis, that is the highest, and that's the greatest bliss. But you see what Ramanuja says: all living beings attain the same bliss, the same bliss. They all attain the same bliss, the same knowledge. They all get they can all serve the Lord in whatever capacity, any capacity. Why should one soul be different from another soul? What is liberation? What is liberation? In the Vedanta Sutras, it talks about liberation as being, we conceive of the soul is in this material world and is covered by illusion, is covered by ignorance. There's coverings. We have material coverings. We have gross and subtle. The mind is a covering, the ego, the intelligence, and the gross earth, water, fire, air, ether. The body is a covering. These are all coverings of the soul. Take away the body, take away the mind, take away the ego, take away the intelligence, take away everything else, and just leave the soul. That is liberation, according to the Vedanta Sutras. That is liberation without anything else. You go there, you don't take any of that with you. When you take a dip in the Viraja River, this all gets washed off, and you are in your natural situation of having just the soul by itself. Now, you tell me, just the soul by itself, how is that different from any other soul?
They're not different.
So everything that we did here, all the karmas, good or bad, that gets washed off because that's a material body, right? So once the soul gets there, okay, so the soul is a personality. So, okay, the soul might have some desires, some spiritual desires like that. But at the same time, ultimately, what is the ultimate desire of the soul? The ultimate desire of the soul is to do what the Lord wants. Not what I want, right? In other words, I surrender to you, Lord, as long as you make me a gopi, as long as you make me a cowherd boy, as long as you make me a blade of grass or a cow. This is what I really want. I want to be a peacock or something, right? As long as you make me that, I'll surrender to you like that. That's my condition, like that. Or there's another person who says unconditionally, I'm unconditionally yours. Even what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? Even if you crush me by your embrace, you're always my worshipable Lord. Did he say I have to be like this or you have to be like that? Okay, so it's, I'm not saying Andal is wrong. Okay, let's not talk about even Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Let's talk about Sri Vaishnavas. There are certain Alwars who desire to have a conjugal relationship with the Lord. They desire to have a particular relationship with the Lord. It's not wrong. It's a spiritual, desire. But still, higher. Once we wash off everything like that, the soul should desire to do whatever God wants.
Yeah.
He's going to make us do. He makes us do what he wants here, and he makes us do what he wants there.
Okay. I have another question, because in the introduction, in one instance, the author spoke about that for Ramanuja, the dreams are real. So we can see that the reality that we live with our subtle body is real also. And
everything is real. Everything is real.
So if, for example,
but that doesn't mean when you see something in a dream, it's necessarily true. It's real in the sense that you had a real dream. You had a real dream, but a dream is still maybe
it's real. The suffering and the enjoyment in the dream is also that is the point, I think, because
the suffering and enjoyment in a dream is real suffering. People when they're dreaming, sometimes they're sweating and they're freaking. You have a nightmare, isn't that real suffering?
Yes.
It's real suffering.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Well, if you wake up from a nightmare and you're upset like that, and the Mayavadi says to you, it's unreal. It's real. It was real for me.
Yeah. Okay. It's clear. I think that
Yeah.
I don't.
So just remember that those three levels. Okay. So people don't usually talk about the Paribhasika Satta, right? Which is the lowest level of reality. We agree. It's a pretty low reality. I mean, in the dream, usually a dream might be full of all false things, might be full of all untrue things, let's say, not false, right? But they really exist, those things, but they're not true in the sense that they're real, because we could dream that we are God or something like that. That's not real. Obviously, that's untrue. But it's a real dream. The dream itself is real, like that. But just like the first example of the rope and the snake, there's a real comprehension. There's a real perception that this rope is a snake when we have the dim light. We think, oh, for a second we think that's a snake, but then we snap out of it as soon as we turn the light on. We see, oh, it's just a rope, like that. Now the Advaitin says that beyond that, that's also an illusion. But so that's Ramanuja says that's all, the Mayavadi or the Advaitini says that's all unreal. That's all unreal. The only thing which is real is Nirguna Brahman. Ramanuja says it's all real, but there's different levels of reality, right? So that snake is that rope, which is actually not a snake. So the perception of a snake, that's illusory, but it's not unreal, and then this body as being the self, that's also illusory. We agree. It's illusory in a sense, but it's also still real, right? In another sense. And the real reality is that we are a pristine soul. We're a soul, and that we're a servant of God. That's the real reality, of course. So, so we agree there's different levels of reality. But to say that any of them are totally unreal, absolutely unreal, right? This is why this idea of nirvikalpika pratyaksha. Nirvikalpika pratyaksha means that we just perceive something as bare existence. It's impossible. It's not possible. Every time we make a perception, if you perceive something, you immediately start judging it, right? When you see something you've never seen before, and you look and you see it, you immediately say, oh, it's this color, it's this size, it's this shape, it lasts for this long, it has these features, right? Immediately you start judging that thing according to its attributes. So everything has attributes, even the thing which has no attributes. If you think philosophically about something, there must be a thing which is the Buddhists, right? The Buddhists say meditate on nothingness. They say voidism. That Buddhism is they talk about nirvana. Nirvana means if you have a candle or a lamp and you blow out the candle, that's extinguishing. They say the soul doesn't exist. Nothing exists. For them, nothing exists. But even if you have this concept in your mind of nothingness, it's a concept. It's a concept. It's a real concept. So nothingness is a real concept. If we talk, like, that's why I said outer space, because they always often say there's nothing there. Okay. In between this planet and this planet, maybe there's nothing there. There's no gas, there's no atoms, there's no nothing. It's some sort of void. But even a void, the concept of a void has some reality.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't, anything that you can name, right? A noun in grammar means that you are naming a thing that you can name, a substance.
Yes.
Right? Every substance has attributes. Every substance has attributes. So the void can also be a substance. It has an attribute. It has the attribute of not having any air, not having anything. That's an attribute. Right? So that's the thing. There, you get wrapped up in these logical fallacies if you start thinking that there's such a thing as a void or nirvikalpika pratyaksha. All of these. That's why Prabhupada, for example, different people have spoken about the Advaitins as being word jugglers. because
Yeah.
what they say is actually jugglery, like that. They say something, but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Nirvikalpika projection makes no sense. It makes no sense. Can't prove it. Can't show it. There's not an example. There's absolutely no example of nirvikalpika projection, of simply observing something without judging it, without trying to think of its different qualities and attributes. There's no example. There is no example. It's just a theory, right? So Advaita is a theory, but it's not practical. There's no example of nirvikalpika projection. There's no example of how, of these different ideas that they have. It just doesn't make sense, And when you really push them on it, they come up with, well, we can't really explain it, but we just believe it. This is our idea, or this is our master's idea. This is our idea. We don't really understand it. We can't explain it to you, and you will never understand it, but we believe it's true. And it's the only truth. And by the way, if you do really believe it's the truth, why are you even talking to somebody else? Because you don't believe that there is anybody else to talk to. So in so many ways, it's just a nonsense idea. All these things that they have, it doesn't make any sense. It's theoretical. It's all theoretical. It's all academic. It's not. There's no reality to it. There's no reality to these ideas.
Yes. Okay.
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. Ultimately.
Okay.
But
So
they'll try. They're going to try. They're going to try and they're going to try and defeat you. They're going to try and defeat you with their word jugglery.
yes.
Like that. We're not going to fall for that, because Ramanuja is going to show us all the simple, clear arguments against all of these other philosophies.
Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya.